Hey, again, everyone, it's Rob Ryder, and it's Sunday, August 18th, 2019. And today we're going to talk about the politics of faith. It's also called political faith, which is something that Abraham Lincoln espoused, and the founders did. And somehow that faith is going to be in politics, and that's how we'll end up in government. Maybe a secular government, but if there's faithful people in politics, well, then the government would be faithful. So when people say that the church and state are separated, that could be, I guess, but they may be separated, but they have different jurisdictions. And the church has jurisdiction over spiritual things. The state has jurisdiction over temporal things. Well, then what's an oath, vow, or promise? Right? Is that spiritual or temporal? Well, I'm going to say it's spiritual. So then the church would have jurisdiction over people's oaths, vows, and promises. And so maybe we're going to the wrong people when we're complaining about what's happening in courts and taxes and all these other things where you're being taken advantage of by people who are supposed to have taken an oath. But as I'll show you soon, it doesn't take long to find where their mistakes are in their oath, and their oath has no value, so they lied on their oath. Right? And therefore should be a spiritual matter. Churches claim jurisdiction over marriages, but they could also have jurisdiction over treaties. And if they did, because treaties are oaths, vows, or promises, well, then they're the ones that would have jurisdiction over protected persons under the Geneva Convention. And then you got military, chaplains, chapels, courts, and flags. All of these things are somehow tied entities between the church and the state. You got ecclesiastical concerns, right? Spiritual matters and confessions. Well, so we're going to look at, we'll look at it and I'll explain it later. So this is Sunday, August 18th, 2019. So let's just look at one definition to start with, and that would be court chaplains. Right? So if the derivation of capella from the Kappa Sancti Martini be the correct one, that has to do with the definition of chapel, one must look for the origin of court chaplains in the clerics who were guardians of the sacred relics in royal palaces. Court chaplains were the clerics who were guardians of sacred relics in royal palaces. Gradually, these clerics were empowered to say Mass in the oratories committed to their care, and thence there was but a step to endowing them with spiritual jurisdiction for the benefit of those living in the palace. They became the confessor and instructors of all who frequented the court chapel. When such chaplains had increased to a large number in France, an arch-chaplain was appointed as their superior. From the time of Charlemagne onwards, this later office was committed to abbots and bishops, and its holder became an important personage in the realm. And not only had he spiritual jurisdiction over the chaplains and members of the royal court, but he also entrusted with the expedition of such ecclesiastical concerns as were brought to the cognizance of the sovereign from various parts of his kingdom. Both in the Holy Roman Empire and in France, the arch-chaplain or palatine chaplain long held the office of High Chancellor of the realm. In France, the arch-chaplain was known as a Grand Almoner. The revolution of 1789 swept away the office, was restored by Pope Pius IX in 1857, and lasted to the fall of the Second Empire. Blah, 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 blah. So, the courts are as old as royal palaces, and chaplains are about as old. This is common law. And so if you think about it, if you go to court and you go into a room with a gold French flag, which says, well, that should be a military office, because military offices offices on army installations and chapels and military courts can have a gold fringe flag. Right? It's by regulation. And so when you go into a court and there's a gold fringe flag, well, did you just walk into some kind of chapel? Or did you walk into some kind of military courtroom? Or what is it? But it has something to do with the military because there's a gold fringe flag. It's really just a matter of, as well, is this a courtroom or is this a chapel? Because you would go to the chaplain to confess your sins. And, when you go to court, that's what they're trying to get you to do, confess to something. By assumption, basically. And then they use different words, and you think they're following a certain process in court, and that isn't what they're following. And pretty soon, well, you have self-confessed, and their conscience is clear. So somebody's using this office, if this is what's happening, then somebody's using this office to their own benefit. But it isn't that you couldn't do something about it. Terry, a gal in Wisconsin, I was helping her in her foreclosure case. And we had put in some paperwork that got the judge to put in a motion for a hearing. And on the motion paperwork, it said for her to go to the 4th floor for her hearing. Well, the day she went to the 4th floor, which is, at the top of the building, basically, it's probably where the circuit court is, the state circuit court. When she got up there, all the lights are off, everything is off, and, it's an empty hallway. And she walks in, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, pops an attorney. He says, can I help you? And Terry said, I'm supposed to have court in this room today. So, well, they moved all the court cases down to the 2nd floor. And about that time, in from stage left comes another guy who's not an attorney, but somebody wearing just regular clothes. And he said, oh, yeah, they're all downstairs at the 2nd floor. I was just headed down there myself. Let me take you down. Right? Lead her downstairs, 2nd floor. And so instead of being in the room where she was supposed to be for the hearing she was supposed to have, she never appeared. Right? That's part of that. And she went down to the 2nd floor for this hearing now. In a room that had a gold fringe flag. So, right, she didn't go to her court hearing in the state court. She went down to the court chaplain's office. That's what I think they're doing. When you're trying to make sense of all this, well, there's something that maybe we can work with. And so I'm going to show you all these connections between the church and the state, things that have happened over time and what things say. And, when it says like this, that such ecclesiastic concerns were brought to the cognizance of the sovereign from various parts of his kingdom, well, it's like, well, then how come we can't go to an ordained minister who's got a license and have them be our witness on our complaint and make it known to the state? And then the state will tell the judge, hey, this is a state matter now, you got to act different. Right? To put everything, to get everybody in their other hat. We put things into court where we went to a notary public. But what if instead, because it's an ecclesiastic matter, we're not trying to open a court case, we're trying to defend ourselves from being attacked in a court case. We can say, hey, these people have violated their oath of office. See, it says it right here. They didn't put their proper name on it. Or whatever it ends up being, the thing that you can say they didn't do right, which would be an oath, vow, or promise, and get something from somebody with ecclesiastic jurisdiction to send something to whoever they send shit to get things done. And the thing that ties them all together are marriages. Because you can have a marriage done in a courtroom, right? But you can also go and have a mayor can do a marriage. And of course, ordained ministers can do a marriage. So they all must have the same, whatever it is that allows you to do a marriage, they all have it. It's the cross between the temporal and the ecclesiastic. And so wherever they're sending that paperwork to, well, that's where they could send this other complaint. Instead of a marriage license, it would be, a complaint of some kind, going to the state. So we're going to look at that some more. But hey, first of all, stop the video and donate, if you could, please. PayPal account's robryder@aol.com. You could use a credit card. To do that, you would email me your donation amount, the amount you wanted to donate, then I would send you a request for that amount through PayPal. You could send it in the mail to Robert Allen Retluski, 10955 14 Mile Road Northeast, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. But otherwise, if you need to talk to me or send me an email, it's to courtofrecord@aol.com, or my phone number is 616-712-6179. But I do need your donations, so I'm hoping you'll stop right now and jot it down, come back and watch the rest of the video. We're going to go deeper into all of these things that have to do with the politics of faith. So give me just a second to load up a few documents and be right back. Okie dokie. So this would be Washington, D.C. Right? And here's the ellipse. And there's the White House. Over here's the Library of Congress. You got the U.S. Capitol. Well, here's Library of Congress, U.S. Capitol. And then you got the Supreme Court of the United States. But if we go in closer and closer and closer and closer, pretty soon, the names of the buildings come up. And right next to the Supreme Court of the United States is this building that's called, it's where the General Board of Church and Society is. Well, the building is actually called the United Methodist Building. Right? So the United Methodists have a building right next door to the Supreme Court. Well, as it turns out, it's just not the Methodists in here. You got Lutherans in here and Episcopalians, and pretty much all the churches of England are in here. And the Catholic Church is down the road a little ways. But I think they're all in this area that's called the National Capital Service Area, which is just a small section of D.C. that has all the federal buildings and a few other things, the monuments and so forth, so like parks. And so I've been trying to figure out who this director is they talk about without any success finding anybody to say who it is. But the more I think about it, the director of this National Capital Service Area is the director of the parks, the national parks. I'm going to write to him before this is over. But today we're talking about this. Right here is this building, right? And it sits right there. And it's called the United Methodist Building. That's one of the newest heritage landmarks of United Methodism, which is a church from the Church of England. And did you know that in the Magna Carta, the very first article, the Magna Carta says that I got to paraphrase, I can't remember the exact words, but the property of the Church of England shall never be diminished. Well, the Church of England is actually, it's part of the government of England. It's not, they don't have a separation of church and state. No, the Church of England is part of the government. And so when the British came here and they started all these colonies, they brought the Church of England with them. Well, they claimed jurisdiction to all this, and it's never been given up. It doesn't mean that some deal can't be struck, but you can't say that they ever gave it up, because if you believe in the Magna Carta, well, then the very first article says that whatever property the Church of England has, it isn't giving it back. It's theirs. And everybody agreed. And then they went on to the king and his other people, but the first one taken care of was the church. So, the General Board of the Church and Society is the proprietor of the United Methodist Building on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The structure is adjacent to the U.S. Capitol. It's right across the street. And the Supreme Court. Well, it's right next door. As a public witness to justice and peace, the United Methodist Building offers an ecumenical and interfaith setting for rich dialogue and social action. And so, somehow we're supposed to be utilizing what this building has to offer. Right? If you're, of any of these churches that have an office in here, well, you got a say right next to the Supreme Court. The United Methodist Building is the only non-governmental building on Capitol Hill. It houses the Washington offices of a number of ecumenical groups, the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, the United Church of Christ, Lutheran Service of America, Church World Services, Islamic Society of North America, and a host of others. It also houses the office of the United Methodist Council of Bishops. I didn't know, I probably did, that Methodists have bishops, but I keep looking for the bishop that has ordinary power, and maybe it's a Methodist bishop. You know, it's not the Catholic bishop. He's a diversion. All right, I need this bishop. United Methodist Women and United Methodist Commissions on Religion and Race. So these are the things you think about when you start to consider all the options that, this country was based on the Christian morality. No matter what anybody tells you, that the very first charter for the Virginia colony, Virginia company. That was Virginia. It wasn't even a colony; it's just a company, right? The very first line of it was to spread, the Christian religion. So, the church is always someplace first in the Western system. And so at the bottom of everything else is the church, right? Everything sits on the church. Well, the Church of England, before it was, Protestant, was Catholic. So you have all these ties that go back all the way to, back as far as Christianity can go. We need to figure out how to use this. Okay, so then they got this chapel. Hey, they got chapels here. Look at that. And they got some history. So this building, in 1917, the Reverend Dr. Charles True Wilson, imagine that, middle name of True, spotted a muddy billboard-cluttered corner lot across the street from the United States Capitol. Immediately, Dr. Wilson, executive director of the Board of Temperance and Public Morals, envisioned this site as perfectly located to establish Methodism social reform presence in Washington, D.C. Now, let's think about that for a minute, because when he bought it, the Supreme Court wasn't here yet. There was no building. And so he bought a lot. I wonder if he bought this whole lot, and if if the Methodists gave the land to the Supreme Court for they to put their building up. Put a road in here, split it in half, said this is our side now, and that's your side. Wow. So, I just wonder. The United Methodist building has played a significant role at critical points in United States history. Go figure. So, the American with Disabilities Act in its genesis in the United Methodist building. Right? So, where did that act come from? Well, it came out of their office. So they're like an agent, right? They're an advocate. They're a lobbyist, whatever you want to call them. They can go lobby to have stuff done. So we need to go to them with the things we're complaining about and have them, get it fixed within the government. If it could just be that simple. So what about this General Board of Church and Society, which is the entity that they created, the agency, right, is a general agency of the United Methodist Church that they has an office within the building they built on a lot that they bought across from the Capitol. And, how much land did they buy exactly? Well, we should go look at the records. It is one of 4 international general program boards, United Methodist Church, as set out in the UMC Book of Discipline. The General Board has its headquarters on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and at the Interchurch Center in New York City. There are 5 divisions of the GBCS, Public Witness and Advocacy. Well, I can see where that could work. Administration, Ministry Resourcing, Congregational Life, United Nations Ministry, and Communications. Okay, well, how about somebody go to the United Nations and tell them that the United States is in violation of the Geneva Convention because they haven't put all their people, that would be us, on a protected persons list. Talked about that in many of my previous videos if you've not heard this before, but that's the things I'm thinking about using them for. But if you have a court case, take it to them and say, so some things to think about, right? You could go to the county election office and get oaths of office and certificates of election for whoever's been elected to any office in your county, right? So like I'm supposed to be in the 4th district. In fact, I'm going to do this because I have hers. Well, the lady didn't use the proper name. I'll show you when we get to that part in this video, right? She didn't use her proper name on her oath of office, and the oath isn't the oath that's in the Constitution for the state of Michigan. So she may have taken an oath, but she didn't take an oath that is going to give her any authority under the Constitution for the state, which is attached to the Constitution for the federal government, and therefore, I don't know who she is, but she's a foreigner. Well, we've been taking that to the court to, and pointing it out to them, but they don't seem to do anything about it. And it's like, well, I guess they don't care if you lie, cheat, and steal. And they don't, because when you think about it, you go to court, it's really the court of the false accuser. Nobody's using their full legal name. They're not using your full legal name. The people who put a claim against you, they're not really people, they're things, because they're not using their name. And, but that's the temporal side. Right? It's not the spiritual side where, hey, they're supposed to have an oath of office. That's spiritual. I should go to the church and say, this dude is violating his oath. Right? Because they did swear an oath to God. It says, so help me God at the end. Well, that made it ecclesiastic. Right? Did that put the church in jurisdiction of it? It could be just that easy, and it did. So this is this is all the Protestant churches. Now, and the date of the building being built, 1917, is significant because that goes along with this thing that happened with American Catholics in the war, which started in 1917. Right? They actually wrote a book about it, American Catholics in the War, National Catholic Wars Council, yada, yada, yada. And in here it talks about this promise that the archbishops of the Catholic Church got together. So we could say that's our synod of bishops. It's not all the bishops, but it's the archbishops got together. And they made a promise to President Roosevelt, or not, President Wilson. So let's just read a few pages. That's a correction. The promise made by the hierarchy assembled in Washington in April 1917. The promise meant the consecration and patriotic service not only of our priests and our religious, but also of our laymen and laywomen. It meant not only one organization, but every organization, not only one source of support within the command of the body. The Catholic chaplains in service, men in the Army and Navy, trained Catholic men and women who would devote themselves to all the men of the service in support of government appeals by Catholic parishes, right? The support of government appeals by our Catholic parishes. So, you go to the church, you put in your appeal, and they deal with it with the government. So what did they do? Well, they created this thing called the National Catholic War Council. And it was an administrative committee of 4 bishops. This committee, in turn, functioned through 2 subcommittees, the Committee on Special War Activities and the Knights of Columbus Committee on War Activities. So now they got the Knights of Columbus involved. They got this other committee. They got a name of an association they set up, and, council, right? They already have an association. It's called the Catholic Church. Roman Catholic Church. Well, it's an association of people that, subscribe to a certain set of values, and they have a right to exist like everybody else. And so that group went and pledged itself to the United States during the war. The National Catholic War Council united in patriotic effort all Catholic organizations. It aided the government by immediate contact in Washington. Hey, just similar to having a building right next to the Supreme Court. That's immediate contact. It explained and it defended Catholic rights. So this National Catholic War Council no longer exists. But one of the derivatives of it is the United States Council of Catholic Bishops. But it's only a derivative. There's these other derivatives that are someplace that I can't remember what they call them exactly, but I think those are the ones we need to go to. Not the USCCB, that they can't really do anything for us. But really, forgetting all that, the idea is that it doesn't matter if it's a Protestant or Catholic or whatever, you should be able to go to your local priest, have your say, give him your confession, have put a seal on it, send it to whoever, and now, this ecclesiastic matter can be heard in the court. Because they're not looking for something from a notary public. They're looking for something from an ecclesiastic. Right? That's what they pay attention to. They're taking it to the confessional to a chaplain. And it's not happening in the state court. It's not happening in a military court-martial court, which is the highest court in the military system. No, they're taking it to the chaplain just to hear your confession. They're going to get you to confess. That's what the gold fringe flag is for. If you go into a building, there's a gold fringe American flag in there, then it's either there because this is a military courtroom or it's an office in an army installation. And I've shown, I don't know how many different times, the regulation, but I'm going to do it again because I can. I'm just trying to make it so abundantly clear that this is what's going on, that somebody needs to pay attention. So 12 days after the declaration of war on April 18th, the archbishops of the Catholic Church in the United States, so not all the bishops, just the archbishops. Well, that would be a smaller group of bishops, and they have a thing called a synod of bishops. Well, that would be the archbishops here in America. They also have one over in a synod of bishops over in Rome. So we need to find out what they call the group. I'm talking about the Catholics now. The rest of you, go figure out your own denomination. But for Catholics, what do we call the group of archbishops when they get together? They're the ones that have the power. Right? They get together yearly at an assembly, their annual meeting at the Catholic University in Washington. I'm sure they still do, and I'm sure it still has a name. And they express the loyalty of their clergy and their faithful laity and proffered their services to the government in a message which repeated the pledge given at Baltimore 33 years before, right? Pledge. You give a pledge, that's your promise. It's a matter of faith now. The pledge of the Catholic Church in the letter ran as follows: standing firmly upon our solid Catholic tradition and history, from the very foundation of this nation, we affirm in this hour of stress and trial our most sacred and sincere loyalty and patriotism toward our country, our government, and our flag. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's who they're talking about. Moved to the very depths of our hearts by the stirring appeal of the President of the United States and by the action of our National Congress, we accept wholeheartedly and unreservedly the decree of that legislative authority proclaiming this country to be in a state of war. Right? The church took it serious. We have prayed that we might be spared the dire necessity of entering the conflict, but now that war has been declared, we bow in obedience to the summons to bear our part in it with fidelity, with courage, and with spirit of sacrifice, which, as loyal citizens, we are bound to manifest for the defense of the most sacred rights and welfare of the whole nation, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Acknowledging gladly the gratitude that we have always felt for the protection of our spiritual liberty and the freedom of our Catholic institutions, under the flag we pledge our devotion and our strength in the maintenance of our country's glorious leadership and those possessions and principles which have been America's proudest boast. Sorry for the phone. I don't really know how to turn that down. Maybe that'll do it. Inspired neither by hate nor fear, but by the holy sentiments of with truest patriotic fever and zeal, we stand ready, we in the flock committed to our keeping, to cooperate in every way possible with our president and our national government to end the great and holy cause of liberty, may triumphant to the end that the great and holy cause of liberty may triumph, and that our beloved country may emerge from this hour of test stronger and nobler than ever. Our people, as ever, will rise as one man to serve the nation. Our priests and consecrated women will once again, as in every former trial of our country, win by their bravery, their heroism, and their service new admiration and approval. We are all true Americans. Who are we? Americans. Ready as our age, our ability, and our condition permit to do whatever is in us to do for the preservation, the progress, and triumph of our beloved country. May God direct and guide our president and our government that out of this trying crisis in our national life may at length come to a close or union among all citizens of America, and that an enduring and blessed peace may crown the sacrifices which war inevitably entails. Well, then the president went on to accept their offer. The very remarkable resolution unanimously adopted by the archbishops of the United States at their annual meeting. I wonder if that's still the name. Archbishops of the United States at their annual meeting in the Catholic University on April 18th last year. They probably have it every April. A copy of which you were so kind to send to me warms my heart, makes me very proud indeed that men of such large influence should act in so large a sense of patriotism and so admirable a spirit of devotion to our common country. And it went on and on and on. And basically what goes on here to say that, really it sounded like, well, the church was just the first of the religious groups, to pledge allegiance. But I think that that's the rest of them did, and that's why we see this building here, right outside the Capitol, just down the road from the White House, right next to the Library of Congress, and in this area that's called the National Capital Service Area. Very, very interesting. So I don't know how we could ever say that it isn't significant that that these things are the way that they are. Now, how can we use them? Okay, let me grab a few other sheets real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so I wanted to show you Terry's case real quick. That Rock County case number 2018 CV 000136 Ditech Financial LLC versus Terry L. Wilson et al. Well, there is no Terry L. Wilson. That's not her name. And if we look at the defendants, right, they got Wilson, comma, Terry L., and defendant Wilson, comma, John Doe. But Terry isn't married. So they gave her a husband. Right? So they're not using her name, right? And you say, well, that should be a big deal. There should be something we can do about that. Well, if we went and we looked at the Wisconsin Constitution, I don't know if it's the same for everybody's Constitution, but I happen to find this in this one. It's, because what is a Constitution? It's a promise. Whoever's running the show is promising to live by this document, no matter who they are. So what does the document say? And if it's a matter of a promise, they're not following a promise, well, that makes it ecclesiastic. And, well, you don't go to a notary public, you go to the church. And you take it there and tell them they're violated their promise. Where was that at? So, but in here, specifically, in the Wisconsin, it's actually Article 4 of the Wisconsin Constitution. In Section 31, it says, Hang on now. There it is. Special and private laws prohibited. This is ever since 1892, or created 1871, amended 1892, and April 1993. The legislature is prohibited from enacting any special or private law in the following cases: for changing the names of persons, constituting one person the heir at law of another, or granting any divorce. Well, that's what they did to Terry. They changed her name, right? And then they constituted an heir at law for her by creating Wilson, John Doe. And they do that in all I can't say all. I've looked at 3 or 4 different cases in Wisconsin, right? And they were the same. If the people weren't married, they gave them a spouse. They created an heir. But in all cases, they didn't use the name of the person. They used a name with a middle initial. Well, I say then that, that whoever brought Terry to court is in violation of the Constitution. And so since this is an oath, vow, or promise, then go to the church and say, hey, these people violated the Constitution, right? Can you send something to have somebody and have them look at it? Same with granting any divorce. So I'm saying if you can marry somebody, well, first of all, that means they can't grant any divorce, right? So you can never be divorced in Wisconsin. So, but they do allow the civil government to marry people. I think that power they give over to them, because the people sitting in court, I can't say all judges do, but I know the ones at like the district court, which is the lowest court, like a municipal court, they can do a marriage. A mayor can do a marriage. So if they can do a marriage, and a priest can do a marriage, and a pastor can do a marriage, and a minister can do a marriage, then they all must share the same power. And I think it's through being called or being the same power as what a chaplain has. Although they're not a chaplain in the military, they still have the authority of a chaplain. And all those chaplains are under somebody's jurisdiction, the arch-chaplain, which ended up being the chancellor in England. So the people with authority in the British system would be called chaplains. They have both ecclesiastic, well, they won't be called chaplains, they're holding the office of a chaplain, but they have both ecclesiastic and temporal authority. Okay, so that's what they did in Terry. They changed her name, right? Well, to me, that's a big deal. And she was supposed to be on the 4th floor, and they said, nope, not having it there. They took her to the 2nd floor, and she had court there, and there was a gold fringe flag in the courtroom. And now I've shown this many times. This is Army Regulation 840-10, which is all about flags, guidons, and streamers. Without reading most of it, or hardly any of it, just the parts that matter. In section, so this is chapter 2, right? Flag of the United States. That'd be the one with the stars and stripes. Talks about where it can fly. The flag of the United States may be displayed outdoors at all Army installations. We'll stop right there. The flag of the United States will be displayed outdoors at all Army installations. If you see a flag of the United States outside, it's an Army installation. Only one flag of the United States will be flown at any time in any continental United States Army installation. But then they go on to say they can change, or that they can delegate authority. So if you were to say, well, because they actually consider a whole state to be an Army installation. I showed that in a thing about the post office, military post office, in one of my recent videos. Right, so the whole state is an Army installation. But these things are supposed to fly at Army installations. So if they have special offices in there, right, they can have their own flag. Well, they have American flags outside of churches. They got them outside of schools. They got them outside of court buildings. They got them outside of libraries. They got them outside of everything. So at the end of the day, all those buildings are somehow tied to the military. More specifically, the flag of the United States is the only flag that may be flown from a flagpole over Conus Army installation unless exemption is granted. Flag of the United States gives these different sizes. And so this is the flag without the gold fringe. And, flags that fly outside, that's what we're really talking about here, the ones you see on flagpoles. All the different sizes, post flag, field flag, storm flag, goes on and on and on. But then we get down to national flags listed below are for indoor display and are for use in ceremonies and parades. For these purposes, the flag of the United States will be rayon banner cloth, heavyweight nylon, trimmed on 3 sides with gold and yellow fringe. Okay, so it's still the flag of the United States, which flies at Army installations, but it's for indoor display, and so it's got a gold and yellow fringe. If it doesn't have a gold and yellow fringe, well, then it's for outdoor display. So where can it fly? Well, one of them is a chapel. That's good to know. But they have this other thing here about these different sizes and these different offices where it can fly. It will also be displayed within the offices listed in C. Authorization for indoor display, flag of the United States. Offices, headquarters, organization, authorized a positional color, distinguishing flag, or organizational color. Okay, well that could be the state, right? The state has its own flag, right? So the governor, if you look at state offices, then you'll see a state flag with gold fringe and an army flag, or a flag of the United States with gold fringe. Jeepers. What is everybody calling today? Military offices not otherwise authorize an indoor flag of the United States for the purposes of administering oaths of office. Interesting. Military courtrooms. Joint commands, military groups, military. At the end of the day, there isn't any time that a flag of the United States is used officially unless it has to do with the military. So when you walk into a building, there's a flag there. Well, somehow it's tied to the military. They may not know it. There you are. Now, there is exceptions for educational offices. In fact, where is that? That's on here someplace. Use by civilians. It says you're supposed to go look at 36 USC 173. They changed that to something else. This will show you how it's supposed to fly. Right? When it's displayed with another flag, they should be crossed. Most times you don't see them crossed, though. If it's with groups of flags, it should be in the middle. Yep, check. Flag display with chancel. Chancel. Isn't that like an ecclesiastic term? That's how you see them in court. See one on one side and one on the other. Somebody sitting in between them. So there's something about the flag, and it's flying all sorts of places. In fact, it flies in churches. You had never seen that before. It's true. So I asked Google for a United States flag in a church, right? Well, there's one outside of a church, and there's one inside the church. It's got gold fringe on it. Outside the church, yeah. Oh, inside the church, got the Virgin Mary and a gold fringe flag. That must be okay. Somehow this building's got something to do with the frickin' military. And so the guy who's running it has more authority than we believe in the civil realm, and we need to be using their authority. They need to be our notary. Right? We go confess to them what's going on. Say, look, these people aren't using the proper oath of office. They don't have any authority over me. How come they're taking my property? You need to put me on the protected person list. And so really that's what this is. I mean, I'm giving all these different blah blahs, but at the end of the day, they should be the ones, the church should be the one telling the United States to put everybody on a protected person list or give them the list of people. Maybe the churches have the protected person list, but they don't have your full legal name. See, nobody uses people's full legal names and so forth. So, and the Geneva Convention, then, that's where this was all headed. It was, I'm going to try to use it with the Geneva Convention to get everybody registered because we're at war. So, in Article 136, this is the fourth convention of the Geneva Convention. Under Section 5, Information Bureau and Central Agency, upon the outbreak of a conflict and in all cases of occupation, well, we stop right there. If the United States is in Michigan, then they're here as an occupying power. Right? The United States, the state is supposed to be sovereign. So there shouldn't be any need to have a United States flag here. But they're calling the whole United States an army installation, and they brought their flag, so, well, now it's an occupying power. Right? We're under the laws of armed conflict. And we have been since 1863 when they declared martial law, and it's never been rescinded. So, there's a difference between declaring martial law and actually being occupying the territory. Well, that's happened now. And the evidence is these gold fringed flags of the United States. It shows that they're occupying the territory. So upon the conflict, and in all cases of occupation, so like right now, each of the parties to the conflict shall establish an official information bureau responsible for receiving and transmitting information with respect to the protected persons who are in its power. Well, so if the United States is a party, then it doesn't matter who the other party is. They are, so they should have already created this list. But they don't seem to have one. Each of the parties to conflict shall, within the shortest possible period, give its bureau information on any measure taken by it concerning any protected person who are kept in custody for more than 2 weeks or who are subject to assigned residence, which I think is how they cover us. We're all assigned a residence, right? Because they ask you what your residence is. Well, which one did you assign me? Because if you don't get that right in a time of war, well, then, you're not recognized as being in your assigned residence. Right? National bureaus. So the Geneva Convention says there's supposed to be these bureaus. And in this Department of Defense Law of War Manual, which you can download online, right? Just put in Department of Defense Law of War Manual. If we're under the laws of war right now, which we are, well, then this is the manual that covers those kinds of things. And it talks about having protected person list, and right, this is what the Department of Defense is supposed to be using right now. And so in this one section here, classes of persons. During a time of war, it's no longer, citizens and, civilians and people that aren't civilians, right? Civilians gets broke into a whole bunch of different groups. Armed forces and civilian populations, lawful combatants and unprivileged belligerents. Well, that's what they did with the civilian population. They're going to start splitting them out and saying who's lawfully there and who's unprivileged. But they come down to this section here, which I just love, about spies, saboteurs, and other persons engaged in similar acts behind enemy lines. And so spying, sabotage, and similar acts behind enemy lines are dual character under the law of war. States are permitted to employ persons who engage in these activities, but these activities are punishable by the enemy state. So spying has been given a technical definition in the Hague 4 regulations. However, as discussed below, certain conduct, most notably sabotage, has been treated as having the same legal consequence as spying. So even though it's not necessarily spying, we're just going to call it spying. How do they define these things? In some cases, saboteurs have been used in a purely factual way to refer to those persons engaged in damaging or destroying enemy material. In other cases, saboteurs has been used as a legal term of art to refer to those persons who are engaged in damaging or destroying enemy material and who, by definition, would not be entitled to receive privileges of combatant status. Well, that would include terrorist. And some lady just said something. Who was it telling me on their paperwork it says that they're being charged as a terrorist? Right? If you look at the complaint forms that exist in the world, like the one in Michigan for miscellaneous for misdemeanors or felonies, it has a space to put in the things that people are being charged for, but at the very end it says comma, and then it says or against the peace and dignity of the state. So, no matter what else they write, they're getting you for disturbing the peace. And during a time of war, according to the state, this is, again, Michigan's military act, right? During a time of war, if you're in the militia, there's only 3 things you can be arrested for: treason, felony, and disturbing the peace. And that's what they have on the damn form. Basically, they're arresting you for disturbing the peace. But they could also get you for a spy, because who is a spy? This manual generally uses the term spying and sabotage to refer to the general category of secretive, hostile activities that were performed behind enemy lines, deprive that person of entitlement to the privileges of combatant status. Right? They're going to assume that you're a spy, and then they don't have to give you the privileges that a combatant status would have. This is why I tell people, I've been telling people, if you go to court, say there's a gold fringe flag, this must be a military court. And if this is a military court, then I'm entitled to a trial by court-martial. And these proceedings are not a trial by court-martial. Right? Because they're trying you as an unprivileged belligerent instead of some kind of combatant status or privileged person, or protected person status. As a protected person, you're guaranteed a trial by court-martial. And it's the trial by court-martial that guarantees to protect your due process rights. Because during the war, the Constitution's been suspended. So even though it protects your due process rights, well, the damn thing's been suspended. It isn't doing anything for you. But under court-martial, your due process rights are protected. So you need to tell them, look, if this is a military court, or this is a military court, because there's a gold fringe flag, and I invoke my right to trial by court-martial. Because that court there is not a court-martial court, because nobody is sworn to anything. There's no charges been sworn. But there was a thing about this, a person may only be considered a spy when acting clandestinely or under false pretenses in a zone of operation of the belligerent, obtaining information. Well, you could say that's what they're doing, because what is acting clandestinely or under false pretenses means deliberately concealing or misrepresenting one's identity and conduct. So when they file an improper oath of office that doesn't have their full legal name on it, well, they're acting clandestinely. You should be able to take this section 4:17:2:1 out of the DOD manual, this one page, right? Copy this page out, copy out their oath of office, take it to the church and say, these people are acting clandestinely. You need to do something. Right? You need to write the state for me. Right? Because we're just trying to get them to put the paper in. Once the paper's in, the state will take care of it. We just need to go to the right door to the state, and we keep going to the wrong people in the courtroom. I think we need to go to a preacher. So, and further into this manual, then they get national accounting for protected persons in its power. So now you would copy these pages and taken to the church and say, look, this is what this manual says the United States is supposed to do. Under the Geneva Convention, it's agreed to do these things, and it's not doing it. And you want to be put on the National Protected Persons list and the National Protected Person Information Bureau. So where's it at? So this is chapter 10, 31. The proper accounting of the detention of, or assigned residence of protected persons. Because they ask you on your forms, what's your residence? It must have been assigned to you if you need to know what it is. Okay? We don't know what it is. Well, what residence did you assign me? We just put some shit on the paper and fill in the blanks. Or we leave things blank, or we just do what they tell us to do. We don't fill out the forms properly. Which is just the way it is. So, well, there's all that. This is that National Capital Service Area. Before I forget. National Capital Service Area and Director. It gives the boundaries. And then all these boundaries are all these parks and stuff. All right, but it includes the White House, the Capitol buildings, the United States Supreme Court building, the federal executive, legislative, judicial office buildings located adjacent to the mall, Capitol buildings, and more particular described the area bounded as follows. It gives all of this description, which, if it's, unless it's going to somehow omit that one little corner that was where the Methodist building is at. Right? Unless they're going to omit this somewhere in there, well, then it must include it because it's including all these other parts. So, the reason to me that's important is, well, this guy there's a director of this area, and he has the same authority as the mayor or the National Guard. He can call out the National Guard. Well, he can go to the president and ask him to call out the National Guard. I think that's how it works. It's the duties of the director, which I'd have to go find again, but, they did have one. So who is this guy? There is in the executive office of the president, the National Capital Service Director, who shall be appointed by the president, but they won't tell us who it is. The director shall receive compensation at the maximum rate established by some level of executive schedule under da-da-da-da. If anybody ever figures out who this is, please let me know. Right? Because this guy is like the chief of police of the National Capital Service area. And so he would be the one that you would go to fill out a report about a crime being committed in the nation's capital service area. Well, all of the people claiming to be representatives or senators or judges, federal judges, have all taken inferior oaths of office, and they didn't use their full legal name. Right? That shit's all got to be done over. We got to have a big-ass do-over. The President of the United States needs to take 2 oaths. He needs to take the oath that's in Article 2, exactly as it says, without saying "so help me God," because that would violate Article 6. But he also needs to take an oath to support the Constitution, because his oath doesn't. In the President's oath, and the 6th article says, if you're going to hold an executive or judicial office, you need to take an oath to support the Constitution. Well, that's what the president is. He's executive officer. So he's got to take 2. And I pointed this out in numerous other videos. This, it just goes on and on and on, how devious they are. But that's at the national level. And at the national level then is, right, this United Methodist building, which is just, the local agent for the church in the district. That your local priest, if you're affiliated with any of these churches, not priest, pastor, whatever, right, should have some way of getting a hold of. And they can go walk over to wherever it is and get something taken care of. There are lobbyists. They're the Christian lobbyists. Well, not even just Christian. Islamics have their own in there, right? So we all have a way to have the law enforced, If we go to it as an ecclesiastic office, because these are spiritual matters having to do with violation of oaths, vows, and promises. So I'm going to show you a bunch of different oaths from Michigan and a couple of different states, and you get an idea just how bad these things are. Hang on a second. Okay, so this is the constitutional oath for the state of Michigan, where it says all officers, legislative, executive, judicial, before entering upon the duties of their respective office, shall take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of, according to the best of my ability. That's pretty straightforward, right? No other oath, affirmation, or any religious test shall be required as qualification for any office or public trust. So that's what it says. Now, if we went and looked at a couple. So first of all, notice, this now it really depends on how nitpicky can you be. How many things can you find wrong? Well, if we notice here, there is no space where I state your name goes. They do have it in federal oaths where there's a space to do it. But, this doesn't have it. So I shouldn't find somebody's name after I. Right? And then this had Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state with everything being lowercase. Well, if we went and looked at one, so this is allegedly my county clerk for Kent County, Michigan, where, right, it's in the wrong venue because it's state of Michigan, county of Kent, but this is Michigan, Kent County he's supposed to be running for. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, and see, this has got uppercase Constitution of the state. Well, that's different. It's grammatically different, and it means something. It isn't a mistake. It was done intentionally, but that doesn't coincide with what the oath of the state says to do. But that's a pretty small thing, so we need to keep going. And that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of, and then Kent County Clerk, Register of Deeds, in and for the County of Kent, State of Michigan, according to the best of my ability. Well, she just said she's taking the office of Kent County Clerk, but now she's saying she's doing it in and for the County of Kent, State of Michigan. But that isn't what the oath said to do. It's Kent County Clerk, Register / Deeds. She's actually taking two offices. I don't know if she needed to take them both or not as separate offices. I would think that she should, because they are separate offices, but in Michigan you can combine the two. Right? Lisa, two last name lady, no middle name. I don't know if she's got a middle name or not, but let me see your ID. Where's your identification? So this is not the oath that you're supposed to take according to the state constitution. So that would be, a false oath, vow or promise. She's actually taken an oath to a foreign power, apparently, by doing this, because County of Kent, State of Michigan is not the government. It's Michigan. It's Kent County, Michigan, not County of Kent, State of Michigan. Right? County of Kent, State of Michigan is a frickin' business. You can look up County of Kent on Dun and Bradstreet, find their DUNS number, and you can find a DUNS number for State of Michigan. And this lady, right, she's supposed to be my 4th district commissioner. So this one I'm going to make noise about because, hey, you're supposed to be my commissioner. And I know Diane has a middle name and she's not using it. Right? She did the same thing as the alleged clerk did. She didn't use, right? It's not the constitutional oath. It's got the wrong venue. Here she says she's the, for Kent County, Michigan. But when we looked at her oath, she said it was for County of Kent, State of Michigan. She's a liar. Right? This is a violation of spiritual matters. We got to go to the church. This is an oath for an alleged prosecuting attorney. which, as I remember, this was pretty much written properly, right? The prosecuting attorney. Well, this is the thing, right? This really isn't probably the right name of the oath or the office. Prosecuting attorney for the office of prosecuting attorney for Kalkaska County. I would think it would just say prosecuting attorney for Kalkaska County, right? But how do you get prosecuting attorney for the office of prosecuting attorney? That doesn't make any sense. According to the best of my ability. Well, I didn't use his full legal name. And the lady witness in it didn't use her full legal name. I don't see how you can call that, proper. Constitution of the state, that should not be capitalized. Discharge the duties of the office of 15th Circuit Court Judge, Branch County. Well, that isn't the name of the office. Right, if this guy was running for a circuit court office under as a state election, then whatever the name of the office is he ran for should be in there. Right? Did not use his full legal name. And I don't see where it was witnessed by anybody. All right? He signed it, but where's the attestation of whoever else witnessed it? These are wrong, not using full legal names. I mean, now you can get all of these forms from the election office of your county because, they're all elected officers and they keep a record at the election office. Here's my all-time favorite. All right, this guy says he's running for the probate judge, but not of what county, just probate judge. Okay. Using a middle initial, well, that doesn't look right. He's not using his full legal name. Well, that doesn't look right. Now he's a circuit court judge, but earlier he said he was taking the 15th Circuit Court Branch County judge. Right now it's just circuit court judge. And this has got supposed to be, looks like the seal of the state of Michigan. But who's on the left-hand side? Is that the elk? Elk or the moose? I can never remember. He's looking over his back. He should be looking towards the middle. I got a dude looking over his back. Yeah, I would too. Moose is looking over his back. All of these are wrong, right? So you should be able to go down, if you're in a court case, go down and get it for the judge, get it for the prosecutor, take it to a church and say, hey, these aren't any good. And they have me in court on whatever it is. And if you look at the court documents, it'll have these same errors in it. And you tell the guy, I don't believe they're following the Constitution. I need to have you contact the state. Let's see what they say. I believe you're a court chaplain. You can do that for me. Because a military chaplain, well, they have a definition for military chaplain, right? It's actually an office. But there's this office for court chaplain, too. So who's playing the part of the court chaplain? But at the end of the day, they're all chaplains. Right? Here's one for somebody saying they took the State of Indiana Commission, Office of Governor, be it known that Kitty is the judge of Bartholomew Superior Court. Well, I don't think so. You can't use a frickin' nickname in your name. This is not their identity. Right? This isn't on their driver's license. It's not on their birth record. Your full legal name is the name that's on your birth record, unless you've gone down and changed it and got a court order saying it's been changed. Right? That's the only way you can change your legal name. Otherwise, it's the name that's on your birth record. But they never use that name. They use middle initials. Well, they do the same with them. Judge for Superior Court. Right? It's like, who are these people? I solemnly swear affirm, Judge Superior Court, according to the law, best of my ability. Got a signature, but we don't even know who it is. Right? James Jim Wharton. They're not hard to find. These would have come from the state. Right? So you should be able to get a hold of your court secretary of state and say you want to see somebody's state office to get their oath. But if it's a local office, you go to the county to get their oath. Here's an oath of office. Who's this for? William L. Enyart. Who's he supposed to be? Oh, he says that he is going to take the office of the adjutant general. Well, for William L. Enyart to take that office, he would have to be a military officer. In the military, they use their full legal name. So either he lied there or he lied here, because only one of them is his name. Right? I mean, if you show somebody this, I mean, you can't be seen. You're not the liar. They're the liar. Right? They may look at you like you're crazy, like, well, how can that be a big deal? But it means everything. It's your identity. If you're not properly identified, then you're not who you say you are. And this William L., he's done it numerous times. Right? He's been the adjutant for quite some time. But Kane County. Let's look at these for Kane County. Oh, here it is. I want to show this first. All right, here's the DA Form 71 used in the military if you're going to take an oath of office as an officer. I, first name, middle name, last name, with your social security number. It doesn't give you any room to use a middle initial. Right? So unless your middle name is a letter, then the gentleman claiming to be the adjutant general for the state of Illinois is a liar. Take it to the church. Where were these? Rosita had so many pieces of paper here. Oath office. I, David Rickert, right? I believe David has a middle name. He's taken the job of county collector. I thought he was the treasurer. Right? So he's holding more than one office, which is fine as long as you're using the proper name and the law allows you to do it. But, right? There is no David Rickert. He doesn't exist. I, John A. Cunningham. Well, John A. Cunningham, you don't exist either. Right? So John A. Cunningham can't certify anything because John A. Cunningham doesn't exist. And so these people just pretend to be who they say they are. I, Ronald C. Hayne, do solemnly swear. Well, again, that isn't your name, Ronald. You can't swear to anything. It's a false oath. Take it to the church. I just noticed this, that, you look at and see the stamp they put on, right? So they put a stamp on the paper, but they never fill in that was filed or entered. They just put a stamp on it. So this was never actually ever filed or entered. It got close, right? They did parts of it, but they didn't do all the jots and tittles. So it's not an official document yet because it's not filed or entered. So this order approving public bonds was never really filed or entered. It was just pretended to be filed and entered. Susan Clancy Boyles. I bet you she's, two last name lady. Okay, you get the idea. Hey, here's another one, not filed or entered. I mean, there's just all sorts of errors in their paperwork that we should be able to show it to somebody and have somebody ought to care. Right? Martha, you got a middle name, Martha? I don't know. How about Bill? Is it Bill? Is it William? Right? Is Bill a nickname? According to 6 CFR Part 36, which, is the Real ID Act, Title 6, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 36, full legal name means your first name, middle names, last name, no initials, no nicknames. And yet, there's an initial. Well, he didn't use his legal name. That's not his identity. And, it goes on to say you need to use that name for official purposes with the federal government. If you're going to take an oath of office and claim to have authority under the United States, well, that would involve the federal government. And so you got to use your full legal name. Mohammed Mo Iqbal? I don't think so. Mohammed? Can't be no Mo's. Deborah Allen? Yeah, she don't have a middle name. I guess that'd be okay. Tom? Copy? Tom, Thomas, that's the things that we deal with is let's make them prove who they are before they can claim to have any authority over us. Don't wait till you're in court arguing about what they said you did wrong. Get it decided if they have any authority to ask you such a thing. And that would all depend on if this oath of office they're claiming to have authority under had any authority. And they don't appear to, right? They're just John P. Martin for County of Kane, State of Illinois. Well, I thought it was Kane County, Illinois. Jeepers. This is right? They're taking it for Kane County, Illinois. He's a board member of the Kane County, Illinois, but he's doing it for State of Illinois, County of Kane. They're mixing these two venues together. Tell the priest, tell the pastor, tell the Methodist bishop. They're the ones that have the building right next door. That blows me away. That right, of all the things I found, I like this one the most. That the Methodist Church has got a building right next door to the Capitol, to the Supreme Court. It's in the same lot that the Supreme Court was. If they bought the whole lot at one time, which until it's proven different, I'm going to say they bought that whole lot and then they gave the property to the Supreme Court. Because they didn't build the Supreme Court building until sometime after that. Let's see when they built SUPR building. When did they build the Supreme Court? Completed in 1935. After the other building was there. So again, there is this tie between the church and the state, no matter what anybody says, and the church has jurisdiction over spiritual matters, and that would include things like oaths, vows, promises. Well, a marriage is a vow, and a treaty is a promise. Right? So they would be covered. Military, chaplains, chapels, courts, flags. Right? If you're seeing a gold fringe flag, it's got something to do with the military. Now, whether it's a military courtroom or it's a chapel is yet to be determined. But what they talk about with these court chaplains is that they would take you to, their oratory to hear your confession in the court building, but not in the court. And that's where stepping down and then with spiritual jurisdiction for the benefit of those living in the palace. They became the confessors and instructors of all who frequent the court chapel. Right? They took you to the court chapel. That's what they did to Terry. She didn't go to the court. She went to the court chapel. Where they took her confession. And she agreed to be Terry Wilson. Because they asked her, are you Terry Wilson? She said yes. Didn't say, no, I'm Terry Lynn Wilson. You got my name wrong. Let's start there. That's the wrong name. It's Terry Lynn Wilson. Right? They got her to confess right off the bat, hiding her identity. One such chaplains had increased in number in France. An arch-chaplain was appointed as their superior. From the time of Charlemagne onwards, this later office was committed to abbots and bishops. Right? So you get a bunch of chaplains. There's an abbot or a bishop over them. And as it turns out, the Methodist Church has got bishops. So does the Catholic Church. I'm not saying they don't, but right? So who's below the bishop then? Well, then all of his clergy are. And if they're the ones that can marry you by being the official witness for the church, well, then they can be the official witness for your complaint to the bishop. That's all we're doing is giving an official complaint through the ecclesiastic channels into the Church of England, which never gave up any of its property. And under the laws of England, right, the church is the government. It's how the Queen or the royalty enforces its authority is through the church, because the church has the court of chancery. And, in the Treaty of Peace, 1783, when King George says that, he's the king of, da 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 da, he includes the United States of America. Not the United States of America, not United States, but United States of America. Well, if you look at your passport, it says you're from the United States of America. Right? Where your money says the United States of America on it, your passport says United States of America. They're two different venues. And so if your person is in the United States of America, then somehow we're under the laws of England through the court of England or through the Church of England, which in the United States is all of these entities like the Episcopal Church and the Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church. And God knows how many other ones that they gave license to. So there we are. So hey, stop the video now because we're done. And please do donate if you can. I can certainly use it. And I want to thank everybody who has. Thank you very much. It has been very, very, very useful to allowing me to study this kind of stuff. Now we need to do something with it. Okay, you all have a great day now. We'll see you. Bye-bye.